See, so many of you have come out in a windstorm, it almost feels like, for this conversation. My name is Ryan Smith, and I serve as the President and CEO of the St. Joseph Center. And we are delighted to host with a number of partners this conversation, this meeting of many new mayors who are here on the west side of Los Angeles. And I want to thank our co-sponsors. We could not do it without them. Everyone, a round of applause for Safe Place for Youth, and Erica Heilman is with us. I want to thank the Community Corporation of Santa Monica, and Tara is with us today. I'm really excited to be doing this with our amazing partners of the West Side Coalition who have come together. I know Rick is with us as well. I also want to thank Vintage Church LA, who's also supported this, as well as our amazing group volunteer collective. Give them a round of applause. Oh, and we have to thank the amazing location host. Thank you, Wende Museum, for this amazing. Originally, we were supposed to be outside, but I think they understood the caliber of panelists, and they brought us in, or maybe it was the windstorm. But really excited that we're indoors having this conversation. So for those who don't know about St. Joseph Center, we are celebrating 50 years this year. We were founded in 1976 by two social justice sisters who took classes at St. Bernard's, actually taught classes, and realized they couldn't just teach about social justice, they need to be about it. And by the way, when I say social justice sisters, I do mean nuns. Because nuns have done a lot in the world, and they took what they had, worked with other sisters, rented a storefront off of Rose Avenue in Venice, bought a fire engine red pickup truck, go ahead sisters, and drove around supporting particularly immigrant families who were experiencing homelessness, and others providing information about Section 8 and providing food and providing resources. A number of years later, they founded the Bread and Roses Cafe that still exists. That is our restaurant for good, yes. If you've ever watched The Bear, I like to call it The Bear for Good, if you've ever seen that show, where chefs curate meals just for people experiencing homelessness with fresh flowers and amazing nutrition every year. We have served 1 million people over the last, 1 million meals over the last 35 years there. We support 15,000 people annually, and we do amazing work, and it's because of the people who are on the front lines, men and women and siblings who've given everything they can to address and end this humanitarian crisis in our generation. If you work for St. Joseph Center, or if you work for any organization really centered on housing and homelessness, if you could raise your hand, give a round of applause for these amazing folks who are doing great, life-saving work every day. I'm also excited to host this because this, Culver City, is my hometown. Literally kindergarten through high school. So go Culver Centaurs. I was class of cough. Sorry, something got in my throat there. By the way, somebody who was basically like a godfather to me, who saw me when I was a baby, and happens to be the president and CEO of the Los Angeles LDC. Michael Banner is here, so thank you so much. He's like a family member of mine. Gave me my first internship out of UCLA, but grew up in Culver City. Spent all of my time here. And I want to say my mother actually spent her life savings to move to Culver City because she heard the schools were good and can graduate young black men in particular and go off to college. And all of that happened. She saved every cent she had. By the way, she went to USC. She went to USC and studied math and German. And I always go, what is a black girl studying German? And she said she wanted to be a translator for the UN. And I said, but for the Germans, Mom, you know, is there something I don't know that I should know about? That's pretty fantastic. But she related learning German to math and her brilliance and her mind. She spent her life savings to provide a home here. We were here for over a decade until one day we could no longer afford it. And I came home from high school and she handed me bags and said, the home that we made for 10 years, we have to vacate in 10 hours. And she was tenacious. So she actually spoke to someone we knew in the community, a neighbor, and said, look, we just need to get on our feet. Would you allow us to be here in the living room so that my son would not have to leave the only school district he knows? So we did that until we landed on our feet. And in fact, I'll never forget it, during after school time, I would call the want ads, yeah, I'm that old, and say, hey, I represent my mother's name, and we're looking for a place. So after school, I would try to find us something, but if it wasn't for that neighbor who opened up their door, if it wasn't for my counselor who paid for my UCLA application so that I could make sure to continue, I would not be a UCLA graduate, both undergrad and grad. I would not, yes, go Bruins. I have to say that because I owe them so much money. And I would not be in front of you. So I am a product that shows that our work works for folks who are suffering from housing insecurity or have experienced homelessness or are having a hard time. When a community wraps their mind and hearts and care and action and resources, things really do happen. I say that to also bring up our next speaker. So I am a product of Culver City Unified, and so is this young man. In fact, I got to know him through reading about him. He went to Culver City High School, graduated, and decided, I'm going to run for school board. He ended up being the youngest elected official in all of California, all of LA County. And we're friends now, so I know what that look means. No, you got that wrong. All of LA County, and at one point became the president of the Culver City Unified School Board. He has made my city, he's made me proud, my hometown proud. Everyone give a round of applause for Culver City Unified School Board member Triston Ezidore.
You know, I really need to keep him around more. Every time he introduces me at something, it's always like this big ego boost, and I really never get an introduction like it. So thank you, Dr. Smith, for that, and thank you, mayors, for being here. I think we know this is a very important conversation that we need to have, so thank you all for showing up and understanding the importance of the work that St. Justice Center is doing, but also understanding that these mayors in these cities on the west side are really at the front lines of making sure that we are combating these issues. You may be asking yourself, why is a school board member giving introductory remarks? You might say, well, maybe it's because Dr. Smith graduated from the best school district that there ever was, Culver City Unified School District, this district right here. But the truth of the matter is, we cannot deny the inextricable link that is found between housing affordability, homelessness in our schools. The intersectionality that quite literally determines whether or not a student has a chance or not. There are districts all across Los Angeles County who are being flagged for differentiated assistance because of our issues with chronic absenteeism due to students who are unhoused or housing insecure being unable to have stable housing, unable to show up to school, and thus are not able to get an education. And so if the moral issue was not enough to get me excited, me pumped up to hear what these mayors had to say about their collective plan to make sure that we're combating this issue, I owe it to the community to be a good steward of public dollars and let the dollars guide my beliefs, as we know that our schools are funded by attendance. And so when students aren't in classrooms, in chairs, learning, we suffer the consequences for generations to come. And so I'm just so inspired. I know each of these mayors personally, and getting to know them over these last few years on the board has really inspired me. If it's your first time meeting any one of them or all of them, I trust that you all will leave inspired as well. I'm so excited, and thank you. And specifically to Mayor Puza, my mayor, who makes me so proud, and our amazing alumni, Dr. Smith. Thanks so much for having me, and I'm really excited to hear the conversation. Thank you.
So without further ado, I want to introduce our amazing mayors, and I'm going to do a bit of an introduction. They'll introduce themselves and their work as well, but I want to say to the mayor who is hosting us in his amazing city. I got to know Mayor Puza when I became the CEO here at St. Joseph Center. We had a really amazing conversation about how we continue to move the needle for the work, and he has showed up. And as my folks say, showed out to ensure that we address this issue. Everyone give a round of applause for Mayor Freddy Puza. So I'm excited to introduce our next mayor, Mayor John Heilman from West Hollywood. You know, I asked John, well, how long have you served on the city council? And he said 40 years. So he served when he was 1 year old. Maybe you were the youngest elected in all of LA County, and is a champion for the work. We are actually supporting a new permanent supportive housing site in West Hollywood, Marigold West, that will open for seniors and will be the intensive case management lead. So we're really excited to be doing the work with you. So once again, round of applause for Mayor John Heilman. And excited to introduce from the great city of Santa Monica, Mayor Carolyn Torosis. Check, check. So Carolyn, can you check? Can you hear me? Check. Oh, okay. Mayor Carolyn Torosis has recently became Mayor Pro Tem, well, no, the mayor, and is doing amazing work thinking about how we center human beings and our residents when we're talking about affordable housing and addressing this issue. Does so much work around the county and really cares. I met you when we were talking about equity in Santa Monica and how we can move the needle as you were developing your equity plan. So everyone give a round of applause for Mayor Carolyn Torosis. So I'm going to start with Mayor Torosis. So residents experience the West Side as an interconnected region rather than just separate cities. Where do you see the greatest opportunities for Santa Monica, for Culver City, and for West Hollywood and other cities within this region to collaborate? And how do we accelerate progress together? Yes, you'll go first.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Carolyn Torosis, and I have the honor and privilege of serving as the mayor of the city of Santa Monica just for this year. We are 7 at-large elected council members, and the mayorship rotates. And before I get started, I just want to thank Dr. Smith and St. Joseph Center and the Wende Museum, and specifically Mayor Puza for welcoming us to your city. It's beautiful. I was saying as I was walking in here, I wish Santa Monica had an asset like this. This is really phenomenal. So great to be in space with all of you. And before I answer your question, I mean, the title of this panel is kind of Get to Know the Mayors, right? Meet the Mayors. And something that you just said right now, I want to just circle back on, because the philosophy underpinning everything of what I do and why I got involved, just so that you get to know a little bit about me in our city, is because I truly believe that government has been at the root of so many inequities in our society. We have for hundreds of years made decisions that have excluded people, and we have engaged in legal racism, quite frankly. And sorry if that's controversial to say, but it's true. And that's a big reason as to why we find ourselves in the crisis that we're in right now around affordable housing and homelessness. So Santa Monica is a very high opportunity, high resource area. And I do believe that it is our responsibility, in fact, our moral imperative, to welcome all types of people into our city, to build housing for all different types of people who need different types of housing, and to make sure that we are really a diverse and vibrant place where folks feel welcome. And so what does that mean? That means that homelessness, housing, affordability does not stop at our borders. It's a regional issue, of course. So how do we work together? We have to say yes. We have to say yes to partnerships. We have to understand that some of these solutions require a lot of funding and braided funding. I know that all of us are working together as a COG, a Council of Governments, to try to bring more resources to the West Side. It's really, really important because I think when we are experiencing unhoused folks in our community, I am not interested in driving them off into the desert. We want to have solutions for people who have been homeless for 5, 10, 20, 15, 20 years in our communities to be housed in our communities. And so I think we're trying to work together. We're also understanding that it's not just our city alone that can solve the problem. And so your question was, how do we collaborate regionally? We have to work with our county partners. We have to work with our state and federal partners. And I think I'll talk about it in a little bit, but we have to think about some creative solutions to generate additional revenue to solve this crisis.
Thank you. Anyone else want to answer that question?
Well, I just want to say thank you, Dr. Smith, for hosting this event and St. Joseph Center, and welcome everyone to Culver City.
Hey!
And welcome to my favorite museum in the city. It also happens to be the only museum. But I'm very excited to be here. I just wanted to make sure that we call out a few people. Our school board president, Stephanie Laredo, is in attendance tonight. I also see a planning commissioner, Jean Black, here, and I can't see if there's anyone else here, so forgive me. I also see Jackson Bender, from Congresswoman Sidney Kamlager-Dove's office. So just thank you all for being here today, and I really appreciate everything that Mayor Torosis said. The collaboration between each of the small city government. I can pick up the phone and call Mayor Heilman or Mayor Torosis or any of the council members, and I think that type of brain trust sharing is so important. Also, as Mayor Torosis said, the West Side COG is also working on possibly a regional affordable housing trust fund. We have to be very strategic about that because we also just started one in Culver City, but I think there's a way to share the wealth with that. Also, just thinking about mobility projects, we have a great amount of mobility projects on Overland and Sepulveda that's coming in, but how do we talk to other cities, right? Because we're 88 cities in LA County, but we want to make sure that all those mobility projects really connect with one another. And then last is just, we have the Olympics coming, so how do we coordinate on that in ways that are most productive for the region? And I just want to also just shout out that collaboration between our state and federal partners is so important. And Congresswoman Sidney Kamlager-Dove just brought $3 million at the federal level to Culver City for our hydrogen bus program, and then also Jubilo Village, which is a 100% affordable housing project. So thank you so much to our Congresswoman.
Well, I'm going to jump in as well, and thank you, Freddy, for hosting us. Thank you for bringing us together. And I know that there are a lot of people in the audience who work with homeless individuals, work with people in need. So thank all of you, because you're the ones who are doing a lot of the work. Most of the time, as mayors and council members, we're supporting that work, we're funding that work, but you're the ones in the trenches doing the job every day, so thank you so much. In terms of collaboration, my colleagues already mentioned some of the things that we do. West Hollywood, we're a little bit isolated from Santa Monica and Culver City. We're surrounded on 3 sides by Los Angeles and the 4th by our neighbor Beverly Hills. So we don't get some of the ability to collaborate in the same way that Culver City and Santa Monica might, but we still work together on a number of different projects, transportation, regional issues. But I'm going to say something maybe a little bit provocative. No matter what we do here as the 3 cities, there are 88 cities in LA County, and many of them either don't have the resources or they don't have the commitment to invest in issues. Most of the individuals who are unhoused in West Hollywood, they never lived in West Hollywood. They were never in an apartment and slipped into homelessness. For the most part, they're coming from other parts of the county. And I think that's a conversation that we need to have about why is it suddenly our responsibility to address a problem that really is a problem that all of us should be addressing, including the places where these individuals were once living and were allowed to slip into homelessness or were pushed into homelessness. All of those cities have to step up. And I will say, in fairness, many of them are, but there are still a lot of cities who are not, in my mind, pulling their weight and doing their fair share of what is the responsible thing to do.
I think that opens up to talk more broadly about partnerships and what we need to do moving forward. We did shout out a couple people. I did want to say we do have the Senior Director of Housing and Homelessness representing Supervisor Lindsay Horvath. Amy Perkins is here. So, hey, Amy. We also have... Oh, thank you. And Amy was just volunteering at Bread and Roses this morning. I believe we have the new city manager of Culver City, Otis Johnson, here. And we also have a representative of Senator Ben Allen's office here as well. Hey. So I'm going to go back to you, John. So, what are some innovative approaches that, cities should be advancing at this moment? Where should we be bold in preserving affordable housing, building more permanent housing, scaling what works? How should we think about moving the needle differently?
Well, I think there are a number of things. First of all, we have been implementing policies and programs since we became a city in 1984. So we initiated rent control and a strong rent control ordinance. We developed an affordable housing, a nonprofit modeled after Santa Monica. So we've been building permanent affordable housing, and they just were awarded a contract to build in Culver City. They're building in LA. They have several projects in Palm Springs. So the need for permanent supportive housing and having nonprofit partners. But that alone is not going to reach all of the need. We also have to make sure that we have policies in place that incentivize private developers to build the kind of housing that is needed in the community. We also have been investing in social services, eviction defense, also making sure that we're providing resources to people, emergency rental resources. We have a hoarding task force to prevent people from getting evicted for that reason. And we invest more than $8 million in social services every year, and a quarter of that is directly related to our programs for homeless individuals. And that doesn't count the $2 million annually that we invest in a care team that primarily is serving people on the street, but also serves people who are sheltered in the city. It doesn't include the money that we just spent in partnership with the county to build a 20-unit interim housing program at the Holloway Motel. And it doesn't include all of the money that we provide in our rent stabilization department. So in terms of innovative programs, I think the programs that we have actually work. They need to be scaled up. And then one other thing that I think we need to address is how do we deal with service-resistant people? We have all sorts of programs, and there are people who absolutely refuse to receive that assistance. And that creates, I think, a lot of frustration for members of the public, certainly for businesses. We're investing all of this money, but why do we continue to see the same people on the street for multiple years without the city doing anything? So I think cities need additional tools to help people get into the kind of care and services that they actually need.
Thank you for that. Any response to what we heard Mayor Heilman talk from? Yes, Freddy.
I really appreciate all the stuff that the city of West Hollywood's doing, and we are dealing with human lives, and that is so important that everyone deserves, dignity and respect. And we know that the number one cause of homelessness is lack of affordable housing. So there's many contributing factors, even poverty, but we even know that in some cities that people live below the poverty line, but they still have access to affordable housing. In Culver City, at the height of our in 2022, we had about 360 some odd people experiencing homelessness. Our last homeless count in 25, there were 105 people experiencing homelessness, which is a 54% reduction. We do know that 365 people have been placed into some kind of permanent supportive housing, which is really incredible, and it's due to the services that we provide. So we have 2 Project Home Keys. One is interim supportive housing, and one is permanent supportive housing. We have a wellness village, which is a type of safe parking facility, and then we also lease out 2 motels. So those are just have for extra capacity and then extreme weather experiences. One of the other things is our mobile crisis team. So now we have an unarmed response to people experiencing mental health crises, which is, I'm hoping that can be scaled up and expanded. Some of the other things, as I mentioned, we are pursuing and investing, which is new for our city, in 100% affordable housing project, which is Jubilee Village, which have its groundbreaking next Friday, March 13th, and it's We have some people from the Jubilee Village here tonight, and thank you so much for all your advocacy work and making this happen, because they took advantage of SB4, which allows to build housing on religious institution property or higher education property as well. There's also going to be a project on Culver Boulevard across from Sony Picture Studios, which is going to be modular housing. So right now, affordable housing, varies from, I've seen different estimates from anywhere from $600 to $100,000 per unit, and they're going to scale that down to about $200,000 to $300,000. So if that's successful, let's move that forward as well. We're also going to open a potentially, if the soil tests come through, a 100% affordable housing project for artists. So segmenting, different populations. And the last thing is just one of my most proud achievements on council thus far is council purchased a gun store that was less than 1,000 feet from a school. So kids walked by every day and saw pictures of guns, and it said guns and ammo, and that is now being converted into affordable housing. And we're still going through the details, but it might be designated for teachers. So again, designating things out to specific populations that are in need would be great.
Thank you. Mayor Torosis.
Sure. So, I think you all are doing incredible work. I'm really proud of the work that we've done in Santa Monica. Santa Monica has a history of providing services, support, housing, and stabilized housing to folks. We believe it's a continuum, right? So first we need to prevent people from becoming homeless in the first place, because it's much cheaper to keep someone housed than it is to find housing for someone who's become unhoused. So I'm really proud that we passed a codified right to counsel in our city, and everyone who is in need of legal assistance in eviction proceedings gets it. We have pairing that with a flexible cash assistance program, right? Because again, it's cheaper to keep people housed. So let's say you're maybe not able to pay rent this month because you had a crisis in your family, but you need a little bit of money to catch up and you're going to be able to keep paying your rent. We actually provide flexible cash assistance for that. In addition, we've a long-established program that we expanded last year is the POD program, Preserving Our Diversity. So we're actually giving stipends to individuals who are seniors who are in rent-controlled apartments, who have lived in those apartments. We know that as cost of living continues to rise, Social Security checks are fixed. We have people who have lived in our community for a long time who are actually getting priced out of our communities just due to inflation and the rising cost of living. So giving people a little bit of that funding for that gap so that they can ensure that they're not housing cost burdened and actually stay in their homes. But then, on the kind of intervention side, I want to thank Amy, I want to thank the county because we have the therapeutic transport team working with our county Department of Mental Health with some social workers who are out every day talking to folks on the street. Instead of having to send out police and fire to respond to emergencies, we actually have a whole suite of services where we can find someone placement, find someone help, get them the assistance that they need, and maybe it's a 5150, maybe it's access to housing. But we have a team who goes out and does that with our county Department of Mental Health, and I really hope that we'll keep getting funding for that because it's so important to us, and I want to make sure that we expand it. We've just launched a street medicine team with our fire department, so we have a nurse practitioner that's actually going out with our fire department to make sure that as we have these medical crises in the community, we can actually keep our first responders for other life-threatening emergencies, and we can deal through our nurse practitioners with what some of the folks on our streets need. And then we're really grateful that we got a grant from the state for what we call Santa Monica Bridge, SAMO Bridge, which is an alternative to incarceration program where we're actually doing diversion for folks with low-level offenses who are getting picked up to say, look, and I think that many of you have probably heard about like the homeless court in Redondo Beach, et cetera, but it's a very similar model where, again, instead of just saying you're going to sit in a jail cell, that we actually offer alternatives, right? So if someone wants to get into treatment, get access to a bed, start on the road to recovery, that's something that we, of course, will divert their sentence for. And so we're really proud of all of this together, but like was mentioned, all of this has to be done at scale. What wasn't mentioned, though, is that since 2023, there's been a 21% decline in homelessness in our service planning area because all of us are working together and we are committed to this. Thank you. And so I see Allison Crosby from our Housing and Human Services team is here, and she's amazing. And I think we're also now looking at how do we do things like potentially take some of these pathway home sites that the county unfortunately can't afford to pay for, but actually take them under control for our government in Santa Monica. So we start assessing our own coordinated entry system and saying, look, we can control the throughput of people who are becoming homeless in Santa Monica. We have a bed for them in Santa Monica where they can get well. And then, of course, what do we have to do? We have to build more housing. So whether it's supportive housing or deed-restricted affordable housing, we have to have somewhere to put them once they've stabilized in that interim housing. So that's something that we're working towards. And our amazing and intelligent housing team is looking at starting a nonprofit housing development entity where we can actually start developing our own affordable housing. So that's more to come, but we're looking at really creative models to see how we can really take the control into our own hands and make sure that we have enough places for everyone.
How many of you knew half of that was happening in this region? And to reiterate what we heard from Mayor Torosis, from all of our amazing panelists, over the last 2 years, we've seen a 20% reduction in unsheltered homelessness in SPA 5, this SPA. We're the coordinated entry service lead here. Woo-hoo! So round of applause for progress.
It's all because of you.
No. It's all because of us.
Yes.
You all are new mayors in this term, right? New mayors. So each of you has stepped into mayoral leadership at an important moment for our community, an inflection point really for our country. So what strengths, experiences, community assets have shaped you early in your kind of governance as being mayor now, and what are you thinking about as far as your agenda? And I'll start with Mayor Puza.
Yeah, first, as you all have heard, that Culver City is the most dangerous city, full of crime and criminals. So I hope you all made it here safely and can leave safely. So, obviously the data does not support that. Culver City is a wonderful place. So we're, stepping into this really dark time, in my opinion, at the federal level. We're so grateful for what our Congresswoman fought for us, but the state, the federal, and the local all need to be in alignment, and it's really not. But people are really expecting local government to deliver, and that's what we're trying to do. And so, when I became mayor, I said it was a new day in Culver City because I'm the new mayor. We have our new city manager, and there's a new way of thinking in Culver City. And every day, I'm just going to give some love to our city manager because every day I become more confident in the unanimous decision we made for our city manager. Our city was in a structural deficit anywhere, it varied as with budgets, but anywhere from $12 to $20 million. We are expected to be delivered a balanced budget this year, which is incredible. So yeah, that deserves applause. Because we have that fresh outsider view, we have new ways of innovative thinking, and so also when I stepped into being mayor, I wanted to do a strategic planning retreat at a financial summit, which we just did, wanted to do a climate action plan, make sure we did a project labor agreement, establish a committee on, which was spearheaded by my colleague Yasmin Amani McMorrin, a committee on women and girls, and then also to make sure no matter who I talk to, people they point to the sidewalk, they point to the road. People want, as I said, local government to deliver on those critical issues. So we're going to make sure that we deliver on our capital improvement projects. So I think all of that is going to be accomplished this year, but it's through teamwork, it's through working with my colleagues, even when we don't agree on everything, but how do we make sure that we are moving the city forward based on what's best for our city. So all those things have really prepared me for this moment. I'm really excited for the continuation of this year.
Yay. And now, I do want to say, growing up in Culver City, the only crime is that the ice skating rink is no longer open. That seems like the biggest crime in Culver City.
I've had nickel for every time
You can come to Santa Monica.
Solve all deficits.
There you go. Well, then I'll go to Mayor Torosis, who does have an ice skating rink. Seasonal. Okay.
Do you want me to answer that question?
Please do.
Sure, I'd love to. Well, I would just say, look, I think it's no surprise to anyone that COVID hit Santa Monica extremely hard. We are a tourist-driven revenue generator for our city government, and we actually had to lay off city employees, which is unheard of, a significant number of city employees during COVID. And so just that shock to the entire morale of our city government, I think was very, very damaging. And then, as we're starting to recover, we're starting to come out. What happened? We have the Palisades and Eden fires, and I know that that's affected everyone here, but it's absolutely affected our businesses because for a number of weeks, folks actually weren't even able to get off at the 10 freeway to come into our downtown. And so really what I see are, just as Mayor Puza said, very similar story. We have a brand new city manager. We are really, really lucky. We recruited him from Irvine. And he came to our government, even though we have a bigger budget than Irvine, we have like a fifth of the population, but that's because, again, we are a tourist-driven economy. And so what we know is that we have to deliver on the basics, and we have to get the basics right first before we can do anything else. That means clean and safe streets. That means that we aren't incurring millions of dollars of legal liabilities because there are potholes that are going unfixed and street posts that people are running into on their bird scooters and having to go to the ER. I mean, I can't even tell you the crazy things. But we have to deliver on clean and safe streets. We also have to deliver on an economic recovery that works for everyone, that's inclusive, and that quite frankly, it's not just for the wealthy, but it's for everyone. So we have, living wage jobs. We believe that we can have quality jobs while we have quality businesses, but we have to invite businesses back into our downtown. And so we're making it as easy as possible to do business in Santa Monica, removing a lot of the red tape, the regulatory barriers and burdens, and we're even looking at potentially a tenant improvement fund to help folks come back specifically to the promenade, where I think if any of you guys are familiar with 3rd Street Promenade, it's coming back, guys, please come. But what I would say is that you have these big box retail stores that maybe worked in the 90s and the early 2000s, but that's not the type of consumer culture that people are looking for. So we're trying to be as innovative and creative as possible and actually incentivize some of these landlords by giving them money to convert the spaces that they have on the promenade into more bespoke experiences, more commercial kitchens, bars, nightlife activities. And we're really excited because we're going to welcome the world to our shores between FIFA and some of the open streets events that we're doing. The Super Bowl is actually going to be the ESPN is going to be hosting the Super Bowl next year, and they're going to do their entire live site and broadcasting on our beach. Don't tell Mayor Butts that because he will freak out. We have the same folks that are putting on Coachella are putting on a beach festival on our beach this fall. We have the 100th anniversary of Route 66, and we have the Santa Monica Jazz Festival that's going to be coming May 1st through 9th. You can come see Kamasi Washington. I know that I sound like I'm a spokesperson, but I'm just saying there are cool things happening. We are trying to make Santa Monica cool because we have to invite economic opportunity. But we can't do that without safe, livable, secure housing for everyone. And I want to just say, none of this happens at the expense of housing, because we have a council that is absolutely committed to making sure that we continue on our trajectory of ensuring that there are safe and habitable housing for everyone, whether that's preserving existing housing or potentially building more housing. And then finally, it's not mentioned enough, but as someone who has worked for 13 years for the County of Los Angeles, making sure that we have good staff morale and a city team that works and feels confident in the leadership is something that's really important personally to me as mayor, highlighting and uplifting the success that we've had. Because for too long, people have been negative, and we really need to highlight our successes as an organization. And it's just real, the excitement is palpable right now in our city. And so we're building on all of that in what we're calling the realignment plan to just realign all of our city resources with an eye towards that economic recovery, safe habitable homes, clean and safe streets, and a great morale for our city team.
So what's happening in West Hollywood?
Well, this isn't my first time as mayor. It's actually my 9th time serving as mayor. And you don't get anything done unless you get 3 votes, right? And Freddy knows that, or in Santa Monica, you need 4 votes. Yep. And we have a very effective group of people on the city council. We have disagreements, but for me, the agenda has never really varied. I came out of a rent control organization, so preserving rent-controlled housing for our long-term residents, making sure that we're investing in permanently affordable housing, making sure that our streets are safe and clean, and that we offer great amenities for our residents. We just recently opened a new rec facility with rooftop pools and great expanded parkland. And that's the kind of thing that I've always been committed to. And then, of course, making sure that we're responding to the needs of the community and promoting good business in the city. None of the programs that we are talking about today in terms of homelessness, affordable housing, none of them get built and none of them get operated unless the cities have revenue. And having and making sure you have a positive and working relationship and investing in the success of your business community, it's essential to all of the other services that we're providing. So that was part of my agenda when I came in. I want to add one other thing that's much more pertinent to affordable housing. For cities that have rent control, what we've seen over the years, because of state law, Costa-Hawkins, when there is a vacancy, landlords can raise that rent to market. And over time, that means that our rent-controlled units are becoming no different than market rate units, and we're losing a lot of that affordability. I want to create a program that incentivizes developers, both nonprofit and for-profit, to purchase or retain rent-controlled housing with incentives to keep their rents in the same range that they're already in. So if a unit is renting at $1,500, that going forward, they'll keep it in that range with limited increases. If it's renting at $2,000, then they'll keep their unit mix in that same range, so we don't lose some of those particularly important lower rent units in rent-controlled buildings.
Thank you for that. It's a really good segue to our next question. So 2 years ago, we passed Measure A, which was a half-cent sales tax to not only continue the amazing services that many of us do here, but also to build more affordable housing, but also quadrupled the revenue for prevention. We know to end homelessness, we must prevent it. Mm-hmm. We must move upstream as we continue to help those experiencing homelessness now. You've touched upon this, but how can we do more to center our prevention efforts as you're thinking about your agenda around affordability and making sure all of your residents thrive?
I'm happy to answer that if you
Sure.
want me to. Well, I would say, like I mentioned, make sure that everyone has a right to counsel if they are in a situation where they're facing eviction. Make sure that we have flexible cash to get people out of these situations. Ensuring that we're building enough housing at all different levels, but also preserving, like you mentioned, our deed-restricted and rent-controlled housing stock. Santa Monica with West Hollywood was at the forefront of rent control, and with vacancy decontrol, it's been harder to maintain that housing stock. And then you have landlords who will tell us, they're not incentivized to upkeep these properties. We want to keep these properties in our community. We want to keep them rent controlled, and we need to work together with our small landlords to ensure that these units are safe and habitable and respectable for people. Another thing that we've tackled as a city, and I know this is controversial with the games coming up, is that we actually do not allow short-term rentals in Santa Monica because we believe that takes off the market a housing supply that could go to people who are living in the community, and also incentivizes, and we've seen it, because I didn't say this, but I served 6 years publicly elected on the Santa Monica Rent Control Board before running for city council, so this issue is very personal and important to me. We've seen bad landlords undertake all kinds of tenant harassment, quite frankly, to get folks out of their units, especially these long-term tenants. And some of those units are left vacant under the guise of the Ellis Act when really they're being put illegally on the short-term rental market. And so as we are about to see the games, FIFA, the games, all of these major events come to this region, I think it's really important that we're working to preserve the existing housing stock that we have in our communities and make sure that people aren't being pushed out. So we're looking at solutions around that. And then I think, look, we have an extreme wealth gap in this country. And so we have to look at alternative shared equity models like community land trust. That's something that I've talked to the city manager about. It's very important to me. And we're doing it at the county level. Not because the data shows that if you own something, not just own a home or own a business, but you even have investment into these shared equity models, your outcomes in life are better. Even if you are cost burdened in owning that thing, there's data that you have better life outcomes. And so we want to help people aspire to those ownership opportunities so that we can work on closing the wealth gap. I know that that's not all prevention, obviously, but like I mentioned the things that we're doing. We have the POD program. We see it as a form of guaranteed income, and we just need to make sure that people can continue to stay and thrive in our communities.
What about your youth program?
Which one?
Your youth resource team program that you work with we've been partnering with the City of Santa Monica to do our Youth Resource Team program, which
Is that a prevention? I mean,
It is, well,
yeah.
I think
Sure.
investing in youth is always a prevention strategy.
Yes, okay, that's fair
And
enough,
I will
yeah.
also say that we want to thank the City of Santa Monica because when they saw that youth were actually on the wait list, they actually voted to double that program and increase more slots. So
Yeah, I mean,
thank you to the
I'm
city.
thinking too linear. I mean, I think anything where you're helping people get access to economic opportunity, and spoiler alert, I'm a little bit biased. I care a lot about economic development. I do that in my day job. But anytime that people have a pathway into a career and not a dead-end job that's paying minimum wage, but an actual career where there's upward mobility in addition to the ownership opportunities is a form of prevention, absolutely.
Love that. I love that. Mayor Puza.
Great. Yeah. So many of you know there's a cycle of 7 years that the SCAG, which is the Southern California Association of Governments, puts out the regional housing needs assessment. In Culver City, we have 3,341 units that we have to build by 2029. We have over 4,400 units in the pipeline, and of that, about over 600 that are affordable housing units. So, we're on our way. We have a certified housing element, so we're creating the conditions for housing development. So I just want to talk a little bit about what we're doing for affordability, and then we'll get into some of our prevention programs. But one thing, we eliminated parking minimums, which, as you know, parking spaces could cost anywhere from $50,000 to $80,000 per space. So it's going to bring down prices, and also the flexibility with the design also helps with affordability. Also, the State Bill 79, which, for those who don't know, it allows for increased density in high transit areas, half a mile or less. So we are looking at that. Our housing and homelessness subcommittee are looking at that because there's ways to create an alternative plan to that where you can kind of, maneuver some of the density around. So we're looking at ways to make that really equitable and palatable to people and neighbors and everyone. And then on the prevention side, I forgot about ADU. So we just released a great slew of packages. So we removed the owner occupancy requirement for ADUs. We allowed ADUs to be sold as condos, and then we also allowed ADUs in qualified subdivisions. So that package is really going to lead to more ADUs, and we're proud to be in the top 10 ADU producers in LA County. I'll take a clap for that because I think that's really worked really hard, and shout out to our planning department who works so hard and makes all that possible. As far as prevention programs, we do have a family self-sufficiency program. So anyone who's on our rental assistance program can apply for this program. It's 5 years. It will help with education, employment assistance, if need be, drug and substance abuse programs, transportation, childcare, and so it's a 5-year program. We also have the Culver City After School Recreation Program, which is basically daycare after school, but it's structured and there's a lot of programming. We also have a teen center and drop-in center, which also provides structured activities for our teens. And then also, similar to Santa Monica, we do have alternatives to incarceration programs, so providing development and support services rather than punitive responses for our juveniles who are caught up in the criminal justice system. So all of that to say, we also are just inspired a lot by what Santa Monica is doing, but an ad hoc committee to develop an affordability package based on data from Culver City and what Culver City residents need in particular, which includes but not limited to increased after-school care, a community store, some predatory rental assistance programs, and I think there's more to come. So, yeah.
There you go.
I'll jump in. In terms of prevention, we've had inclusionary housing for many years, so any new development has to have 20% set aside for low and moderate income. Unfortunately, with some changes to state law, we're actually now getting fewer units than we did under our ordinance. So sometimes the state believes it's doing something that's promoting affordable housing, and it's making errors. And unfortunately, I think they sometimes rush through bills without enough thought. You know, the ADUs, as Freddy mentioned, great program, but every year the state changes the guidelines, so our staff spends an inordinate amount of time not processing applications, but changing the ordinance to comply with state law. I wanted to mention, I think Airbnb is a big problem, not just in Santa Monica, it's in our city as well. And those are taking units off the market that should be used for permanent affordable housing or permanent housing of any rate. And that's something that the state has really failed to crack down on. And that's, I think, a problem with that partnership. The right to legal counsel is great. I started an eviction defense clinic at my law school at Southwestern Law School. The problem, though, is we've got to get people before the UD is filed against them. Most of the time, it's because they haven't paid the rent, and they really don't have any legal defense. So legal assistance is great when they have valid defenses that they can raise, but if we can get people before that UD is filed, that's going to prevent them from being drawn into court. And a lot of times, once they have that UD on their record, it makes it so much harder to get into another unit. The one other thing that I would mention is the rental assistance programs. I think that's one of the biggest things that we can do to make sure that people who have had a one-time crisis or even long-term crisis in terms of affordability, that we're keeping them in their unit as much as we can, because the cost of addressing their issues once they become homeless, it's exponentially much higher.
Thank you for that. So we're going to open it up soon for questions. This is my last question to the panel before we do that. It's a little bit of a two-parter. You can decide which one you'd like to answer. One, so we're back here from a year from now. What would you have hoped to accomplish? What's the one thing on this issue that you have hoped to accomplish? And then you have a lot of folks who support addressing and ending homelessness, bringing people inside, building affordable housing, supporting our prevention programs, many of the rental assistance programs and defense programs that you all are talking about. So for the residents, the advocates, the educators, the business leaders, and community members in the room tonight, what is the call to action for them? How can they partner with you to address this issue? And I'll start with our host mayor, Freddy Puza.
Great. Yeah, this is a very important question. I think that there are a lot of things. As I mentioned before, we need to be in alignment with our state and federal department. That's not going to happen. But one thing, I just attended the conference of mayors in Washington, D.C., and senators came and said the one thing we can really push for is more housing. There's about 4 million houses across the country that need to be built, and they really do think that that's one thing that we can push, even working across every political divide. And so I think that that is so important. You know, I don't think, aspirational, I'd love for the state and federal to align. I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon, much less a year. But in Culver City, I would love to see a decrease in unsheltered homelessness, an increase in placement into permit supportive housing and affordable housing, and then also decrease in the time it takes for someone to get placed. I also think that we can increase our supportive services for people who need mental health services, who need substance abuse if they need it, job and employment assistance. I think we can beef that up and streamline things. And then last is just coordination of services and prevention. So I think there are ways that, again, we can streamline what we're doing. I think we can review some of the contracts that we have and some of the services based on the data that we're getting in. And Culver City has been working really hard in this area. We have a dashboard that has all the data on it, so we can really see, captured in a certain particular time point where we're at. And so if we can use that data to make data-informed decisions about how to make our next steps, and then how do we coordinate with grassroots organizations, other cities, with the county, with the state, because that way, more comprehensive approach. I mean, there's pros and cons, as Mayor Heilman said, about living in a county that has 88 cities. And so but how do we work together, especially with the smaller cities on the west side? And I'll save the last other question for my colleagues here, but I did hear about a program in Mar Vista. It's called Housing Mar Vista, and where residents formed a nonprofit to help their neighbors. And so they had all this expertise. Some were doctors, some were social workers. And so they formed this organization to really support each other. And I think what it really comes down to is we need to really embrace community and really lean on each other right now, because as we know, the whole point right now is to divide us. So really reducing the stigma and joining together to really help each other. So finding those creative ways, and I think that's a great idea that community did.
Do you want me to go? Yeah, you can go. So I thought about this question, but now I have something else I want to say. So last week I was asked to go at 8 in the morning to visit with the second graders in Santa Monica at Grant Elementary School. And they wanted to interview me about my career. And one of the second graders stood up and said, if you could change one thing about Santa Monica, what would it be? And again, I didn't get any of these questions in advance. And I said, they were great. Oh my God, there's hope, because these second graders were so great. And I said, I wish that there were no unhoused people on our streets in Santa Monica. And I know that that's an aspirational thing. What would I want to see 1 year from now? But I truly would want to see no unhoused people on our street. And the thing that was remarkable about this interaction is that all of these second graders were so empathetic. They were just like, yeah, there shouldn't be anyone living without a home. Like, where do they go at night? And they had 2 weeks earlier, their teacher had brought in a homeless services case manager to talk to them. And these second graders were more empathetic, welcoming, and open to like narrative change and solutions than I think a lot of the adults in our community are. I'm just gonna be honest with you. And it just made me think, like, if only we all could just be a little kinder, a little bit more empathetic, and understand that we are all people. It is really expensive and hard to live here. We see what's happening in our world. My husband comes home from work and is like, oh my God, I don't even want to turn on the news. So, I mean, we all have challenges. I think we need to be a little bit more empathetic as a community and turn down the vitriol just a little bit. Because I don't think no one feels good walking down the street and seeing someone living on the street. No one wants that. That's not respectful for anyone. And so I just want us to say yes. Specifically, we have a project that's been languishing for years on I don't want to say languishing, that's not the correct terminology, but 1318 4th Street used to be a parking structure, and we tore it down, and we're now building supportive housing there. And they got an Affordable Housing Sustainable Communities grant from the state. And by next year, this time, I want to see us building supportive housing in downtown Santa Monica.
Well, if we were back here next year, I won't be back here next year. I'm termed out in December, but I can come back. I would like to have at least brought forward this initiative on preservation of rent-stabilized housing to make sure that we're incentivizing its preservation and the mix of incomes that we currently have. Secondly, I really think that not just in West Hollywood, but countywide, we have to have a conversation and we have to have some idea as to how we're going to deal with people who are service resistant. And we have all these great services. We have outreach teams. We have temporary transitional housing. We have permanent housing that we can get people into. And yet we have people who refuse the services. And I've actually been in meetings with service providers who are celebrating the fact that they have outreach to somebody 143 times, and then finally that person accepted services after 3 years. That's not something we should celebrate. That, to me, is an example of government failure. All of those resources have been spent on this person, and they've been on the street for 3 years. That's not what we should celebrate. I don't think any of us believe that the right place for somebody who is suffering from severe or profound mental illness, the right place is not on the street. That's not where they need to be, and that's not the healthy place for them. And I sometimes analogize, if we had a 10-year-old person, a 10-year-old kid on the street by themselves, we would take action to get them off the street. We wouldn't be saying, well, they get to make decisions, they have agency. No, they don't have the wherewithal to make appropriate decisions. Their reasoning skills have not fully developed. People with profound mental illness, many times they can't make appropriate decisions because of that illness, and leaving them to their own devices on the street, that's not compassion in my mind, that's cruelty. So we need to have a conversation, and we need the tools at the local level to help those people get off of the street and get into the programs that we know, and they should know but don't, are the programs that are going to help them achieve permanent stability in their lives.
I will say this, as a caretaker of somebody who suffers from severe mental illness and who I'll go to tonight at home, I realize how complex that challenge is, and I know there is a robust conversation that's happening up and down the state about how we meet people where they're at and continue to provide care. So more to come on that conversation. But I will say this. So I opened up with my mom, which is close. I have 2 tattoos. Shh, don't tell my mom. One on my left arm is Frederick Douglass's "Without a struggle, there can be no progress." And I actually got to do the Frederick Douglass lecture at the University of Laverne this year, talking about how we address homelessness in this generation. But on my right arm is a famous quote from Fannie Lou Hamer, who was a champion from the Deep South, fighting for the rights of all people. By the way, happy Women's History Month. Fannie Lou Hamer, who had a high school education, was sterilized against her will, the granddaughter of slaves, someone who fought for farm workers, fought for women, fought for black folks. She said in the same year that St. Joseph Center was founded, that nobody is free until everybody is free. And as I think about our collective work to make sure that we bring our dear neighbors inside with dignity and compassion and care in the same breath and ways in which the Sisters of St. Joseph Carondelet, who founded us, have fought for that we can do that together and we can come together. This panel is an example of that. Everyone join me and give a round of applause for our amazing mayors. Mayor Freddy Puza of Culver City, Mayor John Heilman of West Hollywood, and Mayor Carolyn Torosis of Santa Monica.
And how about a round of applause for our moderator?
Hello.
All right, so we are going to pass the mic, Oprah style. All right. If you have a question, just raise your hand and we will go there. Yes.
Hi there. As we are talking about the crisis, and you all are just I tell you, amazing. I've worked in Culver City, in the school district. I know Mayor Caroline. And what I represent families of individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Of course, that does touch into the mental health area, but we always hear more about the mental health treatment, but our families have very unique housing needs. And as a parent advocate, I get calls all the time, and families have no place to go because the housing models, again, as Mayor Heilman said, our system is completely fragmented, delusional as to what the needs are. So what can you say to that as to maybe what we could work on, our call to action to getting better service?
Well, I'll jump in, and I think, again, this is one of the, I don't want to blame the state, but every year there's funding priorities with respect to affordable housing. So for many years, we were not able to get tax credits for affordable housing in our city because the state was prioritizing families with children. And we didn't have a lot in our community. And then the priority turned to be homeless or recently homeless or at risk of homeless. So, and that's certainly a priority. We need a commitment both at the state and federal level that there needs to be affordable housing for everyone in need, and to some degree segmenting the needs and pitting one need against the other is not a good idea. And I know that we try to prioritize, as the county has, those who are most vulnerable, but we're leaving out large groups of people. Seniors, we're leaving out people with physical disabilities, people with developmental disabilities, because the priority is shifted towards another group. And I think we need to get away from that.
And Mary, I would just say, I'm really proud that Santa Monica operates its own consolidated below market housing wait list. And so we have our own system of priority. I'm not saying that that's a perfect solution, but at least we have a handle on where are all of the deed restricted units in our city and who are we going to prioritize to go into which units in a more systematic way than having to call up every single housing developer and say, are there any units in your building this month? And so, I mean, I don't know, Allison's here, you can talk to her. Sorry, Allison, not to put you on the spot, but I think like there are always opportunities for improvement. I would also say I want to thank, our county Supervisor Horvath's office, because they've really looked at what is our system doing and what is it not doing, quite frankly. And Amy has spent a lot of time and capital on trying to change our system. I don't think you can move the Titanic that quickly, but I think everyone is, I hope so. Because yeah, I mean, the system is really challenging, and I feel for you. I think we all do, and we're all here to be solutions oriented.
We have another question.
Hi, thank you all so much for joining us, and I think really informative, especially from someone who just moved from West Hollywood to Culver City.
So there is a connection.
Welcome
Sorry,
to
you guys
Culver
lost me
City.
to West Hollywood.
Come on home, come back. You don't want to be with him.
Stay here, stay right here.
But I've done a lot of work here in Culver City over at Grace Diner right up the street. But my question really is around mental health supportive housing. And I lived very close to the new housing that was going up in West Hollywood that was supposed to, or I'm hoping still is, meant for people experiencing chronic homelessness and mental health issues, and to be able to have permanent housing, but also supportive services. So I guess my question really is for all of you, if we were to expand on that model, what are kind of your hopes and dreams in getting, people into that housing as quickly as possible?
Can I just actually say something that I think is a precursor to that? We have communities that are very well resourced that don't want that type of housing anywhere, period. So while we know, and it's evidence-based, that when you pair these services with the housing, it's a better outcome, we have a lot of people who say, that's great, but not in my neighborhood. And so I think what we first need to be doing is all of us here as advocates, as neighbors, as friends, is talking to people. And actually, I would love it if people showed up at our meetings to say yes rather than no. So that would be helpful. Yeah.
Amen to that.
Sorry, that didn't answer your question, but.
Yeah, it's really challenging. We're very proud of our mobile crisis team, and we hope to expand that to make sure we can reach out to all segments of the population, especially those people experiencing homelessness, and then within our interim and interim and permanent supportive housing to make sure we have really robust, wraparound services that can help everyone. But we're on the road, we're on the pathway, and we don't want anyone to slip through the cracks. But it's advocacy and making sure that we provide all those, essential services for people as we continue to build streamline housing production, making sure that we get that up, and then segmenting the different services or the different populations that are so essential that we, make sure that those people are getting the services that they need.
Yeah, we basically don't build permanent affordable housing these days without wraparound services built into the model. We know that it's necessary. It enhances the quality of life for the residents there. And for some populations, it's really necessary because they're in a few instances, they're going to be challenged living in an environment where they're responsible for themselves and they need people there to help them and to guide them and connect them to other resources. So that model is the only one in our mind that really works.
So first of all, thank you all for coming here. My name is Joseph. I'm the president and founder of Bear Truth. I'm a service provider for the city of Los Angeles and the county of Los Angeles as well.
And you have an amazing jacket on, by the way. I might have to buy.
See it.
I just wanted to be seen, so glad y'all see me. But from a frontline perspective, what are some of the biggest bureaucracy obstacles preventing services from reaching the people quickly? And how can we redesign systems to remove those barriers? And I ask that because, again, I house hundreds of people in this city. I deal with the city, I deal with the county, and those funding issues and government gets in the way. And I'm sure like it does for you too at St. Joseph Center because we go after the same projects. So like, I'm sure these things get in the way for us doing the job. And now we have hundreds of people sitting in my shelter right now because of government.
Well, I don't know, Dr. Ryan, how do you think that we could be doing
Oh,
this?
that was for the mayors.
I know, but I'm saying your house. Look, like I am not a service provider doing the housing work every day, so I almost would say I don't have that firsthand experience of like what the system needs to do to improve, other than what I hear from all of you. So it's hard for me to answer that question other than we need more money, we need it quicker, we need contracts to be reimbursed in a timely manner.
Yes, on time.
And quite frankly, we need to ensure that we're not just contracting with the exact same people every single time, but we need to give opportunities for diversity of organizations, of community serving groups that actually reflect the character and needs of our community to get into these like large government contracts. But again, I'm not the service provider, so I can only go off of what I'm hearing.
And I think that, when Culver City did is we brought a lot of services in-house. So we spend about $16 million a year from our general fund that goes into these services that should, we love working with our county and state partners who have really helped in providing those services. Want to continue to work with them, but we do just bring everything in-house, and so we can provide those immediate services. And even though it does come at a cost, I think our residents really want that and see that as a value. And as we move forward, like I said, we're looking at the data, and we're having a good success rate. But as we know, moving forward, what's happening at the federal level with the big beautiful bill, the insurance cuts are going to happen. So I think that we're going to have a big rush that's coming in. So how do we be forward thinking, even though when, the relative short term, we've had some success, but I think it's a big wave is going to be coming. But it's a lot of funding. We're definitely not going to be able to rely on the federal government, although all of our Congress members are really fighting hard. But it's really working with our state leaders, and then it's finding the expertise to really deliver that. And then, as I mentioned before, I honestly do think pros and cons to living in a county that has 88 cities, but it's the coordination and getting everyone in line sometimes is challenging, to say the least.
I would just mention one thing. We could talk about this all night, but faster inspection of Section 8 units. So
that's true.
When there's a unit that is now available and it's sitting there vacant for 45 days or 2 months while we have somebody who's ready to go into that unit. So if we could speed up that process, that would, I think, be really helpful.
All right, I got a question in the back.
My name is LaShawn Pinson. I'm a case manager, housing navigator case manager, and I would like
For St. Joseph Center, come on, case manager. By the way, happy Social Work Appreciation Month as well. Give it up to the social workers, yes.
Has anyone done any data on how long do they have done a survey and how long it takes a person to basically lose their become starting to develop mental disorders after being homeless for so long because of the timeline? And I've noticed another thing, that they shift a lot to like if you're linked in with DMH, then you may go higher up. So it's kind of like pushing them to being mentally disabled in order to receive services. And I just wanted to see that you've been hard on your luck, but let's just give them some housing just because they can't afford it. And before it becomes another lane of a disability or disorder, they start getting labeled, because a lot of them, they weren't mentally disabled or having mental illness. It's just because they've been or fell through the cracks and been out there so long.
Well, we certainly see.
Are they working on that? Are they doing the data on that?
I don't have data, but we do see people who, once they become homeless, it triggers mental illness, or they devolve into substance abuse, and that can trigger mental health problems. So certainly keeping people sheltered and not letting them slip into homelessness is part of preventing mental health problems, but I don't have any data on that.
I mean, I can tell you, if I was sleeping on the street for a day, I'd be having an exacerbated mental health situation beyond what I already have. I don't know that I don't know if anyone smarter than me here has that data, but I would say, I mean, one of the reasons that the county formed and is funding the LA County Affordable Housing Solutions Agency is because we can't again, we're providing services, right, for the highest acuity folks, but we also need to be providing all different types of housing and more money for more housing, period, so that it's not just the highest acuity people that are getting the services, but everyone who needs housing has it available to them. I don't know if you have more information to answer this question, but I don't know that I have data on that.
I don't know. I think figuring out, so we work really closely with the Homeless Research Policy Institute at USC that has done some dynamic work. Number one, just on building data systems around people experiencing homelessness. But I know they're starting to look at some of the cross-tabbing people who may be experiencing mental health challenges, as well as folks who are experiencing homelessness. One thing I will say is, and this maybe comes to your piece, At St. Joseph Center, we are desperately trying to open interim housing that will support people who are severely mentally ill and who are suffering from substance use disorder. And I will say that it may be one of the most painful things we've had to go through trying to open that here in the West Side. And what Mayor Torosis and I think Mayor Heilman and Mayor Puza have said, there is amazing work that's being done, but there are folks who say, yes, that's important, just not here. But we know that folks who are experiencing homelessness on the West Side see this as home. And many of them have fallen into homelessness in this community in a similar way that I and my family experience challenges. I say that in this room because we need more rooms like this who are fighting to ensure that we have affordable housing and supportive housing here on the West Side. And we need more conversations around how we provide supportive services for those who are suffering from severe mental illness. So appreciate that question. We have one last question.
Can I just add one last thing to that? It doesn't necessarily address your question, but it is somewhat related. But just want to put a plug in for universal health care. Because if we have that, I mean, people need to be in services for however long they need to be in, whether it's mental health issues or substance abuse. But right now, obviously the bureaucracy and the timing, people don't get the treatment that they need for the length of time that they need. Universal health care would solve a whole lot of other issues. In addition to that, unfortunately, we're dealing with a clown show right now. But
What about guaranteed income? Sorry, that's another discussion for the next panel.
We had a question down here.
Yes. Kevin Dedicatoria, Culver City resident, advocate, volunteer for organizations like the Transit Coalition and Move California. I guess my story is kind of unique and is shared, I think, in a way with everyone. You know, I'm what's called now lower needs autistic. Unfortunately, I got rejected by the Resource Center. You know, I'm a product of Filipino immigrants. I moved from Michigan to Chino Hills to here. I agree about building more housing and different types of housing for everyone and getting people to needs to mental health care. I'm also a product of housing from not just parents and kids, but parents, kids, and grandparents. Like, how are we making sure that not only we get housing for, you know, people who come from multi-generational housing households like me, but making sure like their mental health and physical health resources are meeting linguistic and cultural competency to meet people where they are. Because I think I kind of noticed that may be also why people refuse to get resources, because they may not be, the providers may not be people like me or kind of understand the challenges that I go through or what, you know, LGBTQ people like me go through. Because, you know, people go to each of your respective cities just for tourism, but they may want to stay there because it's still like seen as a safe haven.
I mean, I would just say Santa Monica funds not only obviously housing that we've talked about, but we have an entire human services grant program where we're funding community-based organizations who actually reflect the cultural competency and the linguistic needs of the community. Because I think that, let's be totally clear, I don't know that government is always the most trusted community partner for folks. And so it's really important to me that we are funding CBOs as kind of like that hub and spoke, like we're the hub, but they're the spokes of the government to actually speak with, many of whom hire folks with lived experience, of course, and actually in the homeless services system, there's an entire program, Careers for a Cause, to get people with lived experience that St. Joseph Center has been a big part of. To get people with lived experience into careers, you know, in homeless services and other supportive services. So I think all of that is really important that you mentioned. I think we need to keep funding it, and we need to make sure that we have authentic cultural brokers who are out there talking to people.
Any other responses? Okay, one last question. Because I pointed to you.
Thank you, appreciate it. So just two quick questions. One, I spent 17 years in Brooklyn, New York, dealing with this issue in homelessness, and still am somewhat concerned with sort of the approach that's taken for two reasons. One, affordable for who is the question I would want to talk about more. Is we talk about affordable housing, but it's talked about in very general terms. So in New York, it would be AMIs, average median income, where we're talking about 120 plus, where it becomes a non-starter for so many people. So it's affordable who. So I'd love just thoughts about how we make sure to push back on that conversation to make sure that it's affordable for everybody, and particularly for folks who need the most help. Secondly, related to St. Joseph and the work, I'm a service provider, work with formerly incarcerated folks, migrants, and the unhoused. Have done that for about 15 years. Doing it through the ARC right now, particularly with formerly incarcerated folks, but do a lot of stuff on the side with other things. Anyways, the question is, grants, particularly for service providers, focus around providing resources and housing, but don't pay the workers. So one of the biggest problems that we face is that you have caseworkers that are making $17 an hour that are serving unhoused folks. So the reason we don't see more support for those folks is because no one wants to work for $17 an hour in a thankless job with a caseload that is unmanageable. So I'd love your thoughts about how we can make sure to strategize to have grants for nonprofits that pay caseworkers adequately to make sure that they're doing the job effectively, to reduce the caseload and incentivize them to do the work effectively.
I mean, I think agree. That is a really, really challenging issue, because the question is, do we think, I mean, I personally believe that if you pay people more, the quality of service will be higher, because you have workers who are not stressed, cost burden, trying to find a new job. I think, we're committed as government, and we need to be more committed across, as a whole of government, to saying we're paying living wages through our contracts, period. And maybe that means that we're gonna serve a few less people, but we're gonna serve people better, and perhaps the outcomes would be better.
I want to tackle your first question, affordable for who. I know a lot of people think of West Hollywood as a fairly affluent area, and we have great restaurants and great hotels. Please come visit.
So do we.
Yes, but ours are better. But in terms of affordability, our programs, our inclusionary program has always included both low and moderate, and we have very low, low, and moderate. But we've had times where people have tried to pit the moderate income residents against the low income, people who are making, $40,000, $50,000 a year. Why aren't we getting any of these units? Why is it going to these people who are only making $20,000? And really what we need to be doing is expanding the supply altogether for all people at all income levels. That's part of the reason why I want to try to preserve our rent stabilized housing and preserve it at the same income levels, because that actually provides a lot of the moderate income housing for our residents. And as those units leave, we lose that, and we lose that kind of middle income type of housing that is so important to make sure we have that mix in our community.
And you bring up such great points. I mean, the system is not perfect, and it's broken in many ways. And at what point, I always think about at what point, how much housing do we need to build to make it, to bring down the costs? And then when we have, deed restricted housing for affordable housing, a lot of people play the game of like, they can't get their housing or their income up to a certain level because then they'll lose housing. Some people think that's good, because then it pushes, they have become stabilized, maybe yes or no on that. But, we're doing the best we can with the resources that we have, and agreed, I'd love to be, get more down and dirty with how the grants are funded and how that money is used and for what purposes. And that's just something that needs to be put on the list and that we need to be conscious of, that we need to do a better job with that for sure.
And I would just say that the funding incentivizes 80% of AMI or below, or if you're income averaging, depending on what the funding source is. But that's why I mentioned earlier these shared ownership models and limited equity partnerships, et cetera, because I do think there isn't financing out there for middle income housing right now. And so how do we, as government, help to spur that type of innovation to create those opportunities for people to really use that as a anti-displacement tool. And that's another seminar as well.
Once again, a round of applause for our mayors.